A couple of years ago, I walked in on my wife Laura and her co-worker Henry, the same guy she'd promised there was nothing going on with. Same guy we'd had not one but 4 different fights about, especially after the Christmas party. Someone shared a picture on their socials with the two of them slow dancing. She had insisted and sworn that nothing was going on, and yet here he was with his tongue down her mouth. It feels strange to be in a moment like that where you know there was one distinct life before and a separate life after. But in that moment, all I could focus on was the sweat bead on his brow and his hand on her chest. Part of me wanted to cry, but another part of me wanted to fight. The fighting part won. I ended up beating Henry within an inch of his life. He got a jaw fracture, a concussion, and lost 9 teeth. It took 3 men to pull me away. Next thing I know, I'm in county jail. It was a fast trial. I took a guilty plea. The judge acknowledged that I had no prior record and that it was an emotionally charged situation. Despite that, he couldn't condone vigilantism. I got a 3-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 1, and, of course, a restraining order. Needless to say, Laura is now my ex-wife, and I found out how expensive a divorce can get. I could write a whole book about my experience in jail, but what I want to talk about is what happened after that first year. When it was time to review my options, I was asked to stand in front of the parole board. 5 people who were to decide what to do with me. I'd behaved. I'd showed up for the anger management classes. I didn't have any beef with any of the inmates, and I kept to myself. Odds were on my side. After reviewing your case, we see no issue with proceeding as intended, they said. Do you agree to the terms of your parole as outlined in the agreement presented by the board? Yes, I do. Have you been given the opportunity to properly review the conditions with your legal counsel in a timely manner? Yes, I have. Then unless anyone has anything to add, I think we can proceed with. The board members on the far right raised a hand and looked at the others, waving her fingers a little for attention. Miss Wells. She was in her mid-30s. African American with a bright smile and square glasses. She was a little younger than the others and dressed in more expensive clothes. I'd seen her before. I think she'd been rearing up to run for public office. Sir, are you aware that this parole is scheduled for the next 24 months? Yes, I am. Have you been informed that there is an option for a suspension of the last 14 months of sentencing? That made me raise an eyebrow. I looked over at my lawyer. He shrugged at me. Turning back to Miss Wells, I shook my head. No, I haven't. Interesting, she said, looking at the others. Very interesting. There is an option for a 10-month parole, but with alternate provisions and requirements. Have you not been given the opportunity to review this? No, I have not. We'll rectify that. The conditions of my parole were pretty bog standard. I couldn't procure a firearm. I was to submit to random drug testing, not to associate with criminals, reporting to my parole officer, that sort of thing. It was scheduled for 24 months, but I was given the opportunity to start a 10-month program once I'd had time to review the alternate conditions. They handed me a folder and shoved me out the door. At first I was just happy to be out, but after a couple of weeks I realized how the odds were stacked against me. My parole officer didn't give 2 shits about the context of my incarceration. A felon is a felon. I was on the same level as drug dealers and gangbangers. You don't get special treatment for being nice. They just look you in the eye a little longer. I was having trouble finding a stable job. I was barely holding on to a part-time thing at a gas station and sleeping in my car in the church parking lot. And yeah, I wasn't my best self. I kept seeing Laura living the high life on her socials. She wasn't dating Henry or anything. Their connection meant nothing. That somehow made it worse. But looking at Henry's scarred chin on his LinkedIn profile, I can't say the fucker didn't deserve it. The 10-month program they'd offered me was called the Pilot Enhancement Scheme. I'm not one to walk right into something named scheme, so I read through the folder cover to cover about 3 times over. It sounded a little too good to be true. The Pilot Enhancement Scheme was supposed to be this experimental program that allowed the state to invest less resources to monitor and control paroled inmates. I'd still have to submit to random drug tests, and I still couldn't carry a gun. But there were certain improvements. I didn't have to physically check in with my parole officer more than once a month, for example, but I had to agree to an external monitor device. That's where things got murky. It was called the Compound Wave Pattern Control, or the CWPC. This little electronic thing you kept behind your ear, no larger than a hearing aid. It came in 6 different colors, including transparent. It had a wireless charger and had a 20-hour battery life, but it wasn't entirely clear what it actually did. I remember lying in the back of my car, balancing my phone on my forehead, trying to read in the dark. I read the same sentence 10 times over, but it didn't make any sense. The CWPC monitors corrigible intentions and suggests alternate action patterns in accordance with provided guidelines of good personal conduct parameters. This is done through a mild and reversible external wave stimulus. The fuck does that even mean? I scheduled a meeting with Miss Wells from the parole board, the one who'd suggested the scheme to begin with. She'd given me her number, allowing me to ask further questions about the enhancement scheme. Not only were questions allowed, they were encouraged. I could schedule a meeting with her instead of going to a parole check-in, so it was a win-win. I met Miss Wells downtown on the 3rd level of a small office building. It was abundantly clear that she was pursuing an elected position, meaning she was in no uncertain terms a politician. That made me more nervous than the stupid tech jargon. You can trust a nerd with specifications. You can't trust someone with smiling posters of themselves plastered on the wall. She was short, reaching no taller than 5'1". I think her small stature served her. It made her less imposing. You don't want someone scary to offer you strange tech. As I entered her office, she walked over to shake my hand. "Right this way," she said, "and thank you for your consideration. I haven't agreed to anything." "Oh, I'm sure you will." She showed me the CWPC. It really did look like a hearing aid. The thing was so light that I was scared to pick it up. Who knows how much something like that even costs? Miss Wells clapped her hands together and sat down on top of her desk like a cool youth pastor. "Isn't it handy?" she said. "I'm sure you've read the specs already. What does it do? Why don't you try it on?" I looked at it and shook my head. She picked up the CWPC and held it out to me, giving me a knowing look. "It's not dangerous," she said. "Yes, it's a pilot program, but the results are astounding. You have to get struck by lightning for this thing to bother you, and by then you got bigger problems." "So it's not dangerous?" "You tell me." I picked it up and turned it around. Putting it to the back of my ear, I could feel it slotting into place. There was a little startup beep, and that was that. I couldn't feel a thing. "Now what?" I asked. "Now it's monitoring." "That's it." "So it's a camera?" "No, it's all local, like a filter. We're very serious about client privacy, as outlined in the extended agreement. If you wouldn't mind, please talk like a real person." She snorted at that and adjusted her glasses. "You want real? All right, let's talk real." She got off her desk and looked up at me, pointing at my ear. "That thing will get you off the hook in 10 months. You can't break it, you gotta charge it. But if you sign the papers and walk out of here with that thing today, you're gonna notice that life will be a whole lot easier." "What's the catch?" She rolled her eyes. "Raise your hand." I did. "Now, think about hitting me." I put my hand back down, but she grabbed my arm and raised it, putting me back in the same position. "Think about hitting me," she insisted. "Don't do it, but think about it." I did as Miss Wells asked. Sort of. I thought about pushing her away because she was annoying, but something took hold of my conscious thoughts. The moment I thought about pushing her, a black square blinked in the top right corner of my eye, and my vision shifted. There were flashes of images. Each one went off in my head like a gunshot. I saw Miss Wells falling and breaking her foot, screaming on the floor. I saw her limping weeks later and falling down a staircase because she couldn't get the crutches right. I saw her eyes turn white, dead, and cold as her neck snapped. The image dissipated, leaving me with a burning sensation that turned my ear flaming red. My eyes teared up with a thick, viscous jelly that stuck to my lashes. Miss Wells was standing in front of me like nothing happened, offering me a paper towel. "That's what it does," she said. "It detects corrigible intentions. It's messing with my brain. It's reminding you of the consequences of your actions. Is that something to be afraid of?" "You do a lot of unconscionable things?" I couldn't stop looking at her eyes. They were brown, but I could imagine them with a thin layer of dust. Her head looked different with a broken neck. I shook my head and felt an ache. Maybe a sympathetic pain from what I'd seen. "I suppose I don't," I said. "And it's only 10 months. That's all there's to it." I took the deal. First few days with the CWPC went by with no issue, to the point where I thought the thing didn't even work. It wasn't until I got stuck in traffic on my way to work that I got another jolt. I was getting frustrated with the driver ahead of me, and it triggered the machine. I got the same flickering black square, and this explosive head noise with every image shown to me. It all played out in front of me in the space of a breath. I saw the driver, an older man and his teenage daughter, trying their best to cut a yellow light to get away from me. They ended up getting T-boned by a Mazda and a Jeep. I saw firefighters trying to pull them out of the wreckage. There was fire and crying and screaming, a woman scraping her knees against the asphalt, clutching a cross around her neck and screaming at the top of her lungs that the devil took her baby. When I came to, I slowed down. There was no wreckage. I was still muttering that woman's words. Devil took her baby. I wiped the eye jelly with my sleeve as I felt my ear flaming up again. The effect was painful, but I couldn't deny that it calmed me down. It put things into perspective how a little road rage could destroy lives far beyond my own. I had to stay in control. Device or no device, I had to be careful. That was pretty much the worst of it. I could feel it flare up a couple of times over the next week, but nothing quite like that. It almost triggered when I cut in line at the supermarket, but I managed to step back before it went off completely. I got away with a warm ear and an apology. I thought it might go off when I watched the Timberwolves game with some guys from work, but the device didn't react at all. It seemed to be able to register the context of emotional reaction to a game differently. All in all, I was pretty happy with it. I could go 10 months with it, no problem. With a little more leeway and a little more freedom, I was able to get some more hours at the gas station. Not much, but enough that I could afford a motel room. No more sleeping in the car, but I had a long way to go before I could get an apartment. Most days I'd forget I was even wearing the CWPC. I had one of the guys at work ask me about it, and I just said it was a new kind of AirPod. Turning to counter was the only thing I didn't like doing. Stressed people can be frustrating to deal with, and some can be outright demeaning. People like feeling better about themselves by putting down the guy working the register. They like to flash their most expensive cards, or make snide remarks. I had the CWPC trigger 3 times in one day. The last time, I imagined jumping over the counter and strangling a woman on the floor. I saw the whole chain of events, leading all the way up to her family crying over her picture as her closed casket was lowered into the earth. The moment I came out of it, I almost broke down in tears. I kept apologizing to her despite not actually doing anything. The CWPC wasn't meant to be comfortable. The damn thing burned as the battery ran hot, forcing me to alternate between my ears. Just triggering a couple times a day was enough for a boil to pop up on my skin. Thank God I don't have to wear glasses. After a month of using the device, I'd gotten into a rhythm. I charged it at night, I wore it during the day, and I stuck to the straight and narrow. If I felt it going hot, I stepped away from whatever I was doing. If it actually triggered, I went ahead and did something else for a while. I got a cream to put behind my ear and started carrying a handful of wet wipes for the eye jelly. Then one day, as I worked the register, Henry walked in. Yes, that Henry. He was getting some cigarettes, but that was enough to send me down a rabbit hole. Laura hated cigarettes. She'd made me quit smoking when we first started dating back in college, but she had no problem rounding third base with this guy. The thought snuck up on me. I imagined walking out from behind the counter and breaking his goddamn nose. But as the device triggered, I saw the rest of it play out in my mind's eye. How he toppled backwards, smacking the back of his head on the cold stone tiles. How he ended up in a hospital on life support. His brother holding his hand as they pulled the plug. I could feel the sorrow of it. The hatred directed rightfully back at me. The moment I snapped back, I got a wet wipe and cleared the jelly from my eyes. Henry looked at me, shaking his head. "Are you crying?" "I'll let someone else take this." "You're crying, aren't you?" He crossed his arms, clearly confrontational. Maybe our last encounter made him feel like less of a man. Maybe belittling me made the scar on his face feel a little lighter. I stepped away from the counter and asked one of the other guys to take my place as I slipped out the back. Just a couple minutes later, I met Henry outside in the parking lot. The CWPC was on the edge of triggering again, but I did my best to stay calm. As long as I didn't look at him, I was fine. I could think about nice things. Purring kittens, grass beneath my feet, serene blue sunflowers, swaying in the wind. Don't think you can take me when I ain't got my pants down. I don't want any trouble. I ain't here to get you in trouble, he said. I just want you to know you're a bitch. Yeah, fine, a bitch. The back door clicked. The thing is on an automatic timer, and I'd been out a little too long. I'd left my keys on the counter by the register. I'd have to walk back around, but Henry was in the way. I tried making a wide turn, but he cut me off. Man, prison did a number on you, huh? I'm just trying to work, man. I think we've got some unsettled business. He raised his fists, but I shook my head. He was clearly looking for a fight, and I couldn't risk it. I looked up at him, met his eyes, and felt the CWPC firing up. What's it gonna take for you to let me go back to work? I asked. How about I beat the shit out of you? The CWPC triggered. The black square flared up. I could see myself sweeping his leg and putting my foot on his neck. There were more images of him getting taken into an ambulance, but that just didn't seem to invoke the same kind of emotional response in me. It wasn't powerful enough, so it switched gears. The black square doubled in size, instead showing me a kid across the street seeing me kill this guy. This kid would be destroyed. He'd lay awake at night. He'd be in endless therapy sessions. They called him Murder Boy as he played on the swings. That seemed to get the reaction it wanted from me. I didn't want that. I didn't want any of that. The moment I snapped out of it, I almost took the device off. I could take it off for a couple of seconds to wash my ear, but any more than that and it would alert my parole officer. This time, I wanted to chuck it into the parking lot and piss on it. I got another wet wipe and cleared my eyes, just in time to see Henry's fist coming down on me. It hit the CWPC straight on. First thing that came to mind was that one thing Miss Wells had said. You'd have to get struck by lightning. Well, it wasn't lightning, but it was a fistful of knuckles with 2 thick silver rings, and they broke the battery. The gadget made a popping noise, leaving me with melting plastic and sizzling battery acid on my skin. I tried clawing at it to get it off, but it ended up burning my fingers. I stepped away, screaming, and I saw his face shift. He knew he'd fucked up. It was one thing to take a swing at someone. This was something else. One of my coworkers came running as Henry took off. The one good thing to come from this was the fact that I could finally let my emotions out. I could act like an idiot without having a nanny cam burn through my mind. So I gave Henry the middle finger, and I raised my voice to tell him what to expect next time we meet. I had every intention of making a threat. I stopped before I got past the first syllable. My right eye was twitching, and I could see the outlines of a black square. I didn't even have the CWPC anymore. I had to schedule an extra meeting with Miss Wells to get a new device. I wanted to press charges against Henry, but there was no camera on that side, and I wasn't even supposed to be near him to begin with. Bringing litigation into this was inviting a boatload of scrutiny, and he'd have the jury on his side. It was a pointless fight, even if I'd win. Much like what went down in that parking lot. Returning to Miss Wells, I had to wait in line. There were 2 other guys ahead of me. One of them was this rough-looking, skinny dude with a crudely drawn cartoon tattooed on his neck. He kept looking up at me. At my ears, specifically. They got you with the butterfly eyes. The what? Butterfly eyes. You got the burns. Why you call it that? Chaos theory, man. A butterfly flaps its wings, there's a hurricane in Tokyo, we get to see that. Butterfly eyes. He pointed to his own ear. The skin around it was patchy and rough, like the scales of a lizard. Done the program 2 times, he continued. Makes you crazy. Then why you keep doing it? I told you, he smiled. I'm crazy. When I finally got to see Miss Wells, I showed her my ear. The burns were pretty bad, but I'd put on a salve and some surgical tape. I couldn't sleep on that side, but apart from that, I was doing all right. She didn't seem all that convinced. We can get you a new one, but I think you're going to need some time for that to heal. You're kicking me off the program? Not at all. You're enrolled. Consider this downtime. Give yourself some time to adjust. Let's say 2 weeks, all right? That's all right with you. It's all right with me. Good, good. She nodded as she closed a folder, inspecting my signature on the last page. As she put it away and I got ready to leave, she crossed her arms and gave me a knowing look. Have you had any problems? She asked. What kind of problems? Since the CWPC broke, she clarified. Some folks reported dizziness when it crashes unexpectedly. Not sure. Maybe a couple of twitches. I could tell she didn't like that answer. She didn't like it at all. I thought a couple weeks without the CWPC was going to be a walk in the park, but it turns out things are rarely that simple. Now, I have no need to do bad things, but there are certain impulses that are impossible to repress. If someone was to jump out at me, I push them away. That's just instinct. Same thing goes with other surprises like a sudden phone call, or when a car backfires. I was crossing the road this one time, late afternoon, coming home from work. Got a bag full of groceries. This car didn't see me and slammed the brakes at the last second, screeching to a halt and barely grazing my left leg. There's this loud horn and someone screaming. My adrenaline spiked and this guy comes running at me. My first thought is to keep him away, but as I raise my hand, something happens. The black square flashes in the top right corner of my eye. I see myself pushing him back. He stumbles into oncoming traffic, getting run over by a sedan. Blood on a broken windshield as a mother of 3 gets out of her car, crying for help. A boy in the back seat sees brain matter for the first time. As I blink, the image dissipates. My hand shoots up to my ear, feeling the empty space where the CWPC used to be. My ear feels warmer as the man helps me to my feet, apologizing profusely. The effect was still there, despite the gadget being reduced to dust. After that encounter, it triggered more often. Not just when I got nervous or angry, but pretty much whenever I did any deliberate action. It could trigger when I buttered my toast in the morning, giving me a vision of me getting electrocuted. It could trigger in the shower, showing me slipping, but the worst was whenever I was out among people. Tight's the guilt that really sticks with you. It always frames your actions as the cause of suffering. You buy a pack of smokes? It shows you that it was the last pack of that brand, causing the next guy in line to have to go to another store. On his way there, he gets murdered. You want to fill up with gas? You see yourself spilling, and someone later sets themselves on fire. I didn't even have the CWPC anymore, but the visions kept coming back over and over again. Every single day was filled with images of dying men, women, and children. Starving dogs, poisoned birds, baby kittens choking to death. Crying babies left in the car as my actions caused a mother to come back a little too late. It was getting worse, and when I picked up the phone to call Miss Wells, it triggered again. I saw her missing the last words of her dying father because he would call seconds after me. I held my thumb over the call button. It felt so real. How could I tell if the consequence was something to be expected or something completely fabricated? I saw 3 more scenarios play out as my finger trembled over the call button. She misses a call from the hospital. She gets distracted and falls down the stairs. She looks away for a split second at an intersection. Death, death, death. But I pressed anyway. Defying this thing just kicks the effect up to 11. I can't even count all the way it showed me Miss Wells dying. The moment she answered, I couldn't tell her real words from the screams and the gaps in my mind. One version of her politely says hello, while another is being lit in fire, screaming at the top of her searing lungs. I can't tell which is which. It's broken, I call out. It's broken and it's fucking with my head. She's screaming at me, gargling battery acid. There's crying and pain, and I see the white of her eyes. Then she asks how bad it is. Please, I cried. Please, it's not working, it's out of control. The call disconnected. Maybe I did it myself, I couldn't tell. The image subsided. There was blood flowing from my ear as the boils popped, making it look like I'd taken a bullet at point-blank range. I had to call for help. I had to try again. Miss Wells. Anyone. I picked up the phone and dialed the emergency services, but I could feel it all coming back. The black square grew larger in the outline of my eye. I saw my one call blocking a child from reaching an operator in time, forcing her to watch her mother choke to death on the floor. An elderly woman trying to get through, desperately performing the Heimlich maneuver on her dying husband. If I pressed that call button, I would be the cause of so much pain. I picked up my phone, got on my knees, and smashed it against the kitchen floor over and over. That helped a little. The visions couldn't come back if I couldn't make any calls. Somehow, it got worse. Every step I took could cause another trigger. It might show me stepping on a ladybug. If I hadn't done that, it would have distracted a kitty cat from walking into oncoming traffic. A little girl sleeps alone because of me. I flush the toilet and see the pipes clog, causing a blockage that stops a man from getting that glass of water he needs to swallow his life-saving medication. Do pipes even work like that? That's what it showed me, so it had to be true. Every single action I took, I was bombarded with impression of how fucking awful I was. Every action leading to consequence of pain, death, dismemberment, and this endless sadness. I started to see so much terror that I went from having the image of a dead person on my mind to having a catalog of them. I could no longer think about a single dead individual. There were too many of them. After a while, they all start to look the same. I would lie in my bed, staring at the ceiling. Even the most basic autonomous actions of my body would cause images of pain and destruction. I stole a breath meant for a better man. I blinked at a moment when I needed to see something critical. I raise a hand, blocking a signal from reaching an intended target. I tried holding my breath, but I couldn't win. Living or dying, breathing or not, none of it mattered. All I saw was the never-ending circle of pain emanating from me, killing everything cursed enough to be in my vicinity. What the hell was I supposed to do? If you're getting the same result either way, does it matter what you do? I stayed in bed for 2 days, just watching this endless loop play out in front of me. I must have seen millions of people die. Tens of millions. I could see it in excruciating detail, in ways I could never have imagined on my own. There are so many ways to get cut by a knife, so many nerves that can be severed. I could anticipate the pitch of a death scream from the angle of a cut. Since it didn't matter what I did, I got up. When I did, I could barely see anything. I was experiencing the world as a kaleidoscope of possibilities. In one world, I'm taking a step forward. In another, I'm crashing through the floor, killing the guest in the room below. But I'm still taking that step. If I would have killed something either way, what does it matter if I get up to get a glass of water? It felt like relearning everything. I had to stop relying on my sense of hearing, as my ears had swollen to the point where all I heard was my heartbeat. The right side of my face was caked in dry blood, and I could tell I was a little pale in the bathroom mirror. I think I was, at least. I saw so many things in that mirror that I can't tell which was the real me. What surprised me the most was how these images made me feel. At first, I'd felt like the worst man in the world, like the core and center of all evils, but after a while, I didn't feel a thing. If I feel the same putting on shoes as I would shooting a man in the head, what's stopping me from doing both? I tested the boundaries a little. I took a walk around the neighborhood. Yes, the images were there. No, I didn't care. I thought about things that I knew would trigger a response, like pushing a woman into traffic, or taking a taxi to Henry's place and rip his tongue out with my bare hands. Yes, the images remained. More death and terror and guilt. But that was already there. If everything is already tuned to max, you can't go louder. I don't know when I decided to do something. I don't think it was a conscious choice. Maybe I thought about testing a little more, or doing something stupid to see if I could get the damn thing to short-circuit my brain completely. I remember picking up a knife and stuffing it in my pocket. I remember throwing a potted plant out my bedroom window. I punctured the tires of a parked car, just to see if things could get worse. And yes, I saw images of a family of 4 careening off a steep cliff. Yes, I saw an elderly woman getting the back of her head caved in by a potted plant. But I would have seen variations of those things even if I just stayed in bed, breathing, so what does it matter? There was this long road. I think I took the bus. I either stabbed a man or paid the bus fare, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. It was supposed to be a 10-minute ride, but it was dark when I got out. I walked in circles, not arriving at my destination until well after midnight. I recognized the shape of the name on the door, but I couldn't bring myself to read it. I wasn't knocking anyway, I just had to be sure I was in the right place. I thought about having a civil conversation with Henry. I thought we could work things out and put this behind us. After all, I did a number on him. I deserved to be punished back then. I'd been out of control. But I wasn't like that anymore. That rational part of me was a fraction of an exponentially growing cavalcade of actions. When the most sane part of you occupies a 10,000th of a percentile, you have to expect yourself to submit to the irrational. I'd intended a conversation, but ended up breaking through his window. Before I even saw him, I'd killed him 1,000 times over. By the time he stepped out of his bedroom in nothing but his boxer shorts, I'd already heard the multitude of death screams he could muster. I didn't plan to do anything. I had no intention of hurting him. I just let whatever came naturally happen. Whether that was apologizing or putting my hand down his throat was a coin toss. Let the chips fall where they may. I saw myself stabbing him to death 100 times over, and it was nothing I hadn't seen before. But I didn't see a single word where this man was not condemned to die a horrific death. I think someone pulled me off of him. There was this pain in my arm, and I was having trouble breathing. I was face down on the ground, strange red and blue lights illuminating new corpses with every rotation. I think Miss Wells was there too. There was a man in a white coat with a scalpel. When I didn't see him stabbing himself to death with it, he was being instructed to do something to me. I was given a tranquilizer. When I woke up, I had this awful ringing noise in my head. The right side of my face was burning, and I couldn't hear anything. I was lying on the side, looking at a hospital room. There were no images, no screams, just me and Miss Wells. I couldn't hear her speak, so she wrote something on a tablet. Her hands were trembling, and I could tell she'd been crying. She spelled out an explanation as simple as she could. I had done something bad. They had to remove my right ear and puncture my eardrums. I was going to be okay, but things were going to get complicated. I had a couple of false alarms as my ears healed. I would imagine seeing that black square, but I never really did. I was so used to having my head occupied with things that weren't my own that it was strangely empty without it. Sometimes I had this feeling in my gut that maybe I was still stuck inside one long vision, and that I'd snap back to whatever moment triggered it. Maybe it was that meeting with Henry in the parking lot. I don't think they were allowed to continue with the scheme. They'd had hiccups before, but never anything like this. There was a settlement, an agreement, and I relocated to the West Coast under a new name, far away from prying eyes and curious questions. Funny how beating a man up got me a year, but killing him didn't cost me a day. Nowadays, you can see me walking down the street like anyone else. I go to the park to watch the seagulls fight over French fries. Hush money runs deep, but there's nothing for me to do with it. I want nothing. There's this part of me that's completely blown out, like they took a piece of me and left it on the floor somewhere. I don't turn my head when I hear a crying baby, and I barely slow down when the lights turn red. I cut in line at the store. I smoke in crowded spaces. I don't care. I can't care even if I wanted to. You can't see guilt through a butterfly's eyes.